Hello and welcome to the Election Corner on One Man Think Tank. Today we have a new Alaska poll, so let's just dive right in. Well, not immediately, I do have a brief note for my regular viewers. Monday's video didn't get uploaded on account of the fact that there were multiple technical glitches. I'm going to properly upload it probably with Wednesday's video, just so you know. Or move it to next Monday because it was a tad bit of a timeless, or at least timeless for between 2 weeks of a video. Or I may just redo it. We'll have to see. It's about 538's election forecast. Anyway, on to Alaska. Now, this is the second poll we've seen come out of Alaska by Public Policy Polling. They're the only ones who actually seem to be polling this race, and frankly, it's really good news for Al Gross. Now, Public Policy Polling, I'm going to initially say, does have a Democratic slant. So they do tend to be biased against the Republican Party. You can see here it's partially due to the fact that they don't get as many older voters, at least from what I've seen. But you need to follow the trends. Now, the prior version of Alaska's polling came out to Al Gross, the independent challenger, polling at, I believe, 35%. And the incumbent senator, Dan Sullivan, polling at 39%. So, what's the polling now? Well, if we scroll down, where is it? Not favorability. If the election were held today. 43 and 43, 14% not sure. Al Gross taking 3/4 of the Democrats and half of the independents. These are good numbers for him to go. And here's another point. Let's look at favorabilities. Oh, look, over a third of Alaska still doesn't know who he is. Sorry, I can't highlight right now. That's really good news for Al Gross. Enough that I think Alaska is going to, from likely to leans now, or maybe leans to tilt. These are really bad numbers for Dan Sullivan. He should be polling a lot better than this. To give you an idea, I was reviewing Alaska's map numbers, and what we're seeing is, so the gubernatorial race went surprisingly Republican. Like, not it went Republican and that's surprising, but rather it went surprisingly Republican in the fact that the Republican won over 51% of the vote when people expected it to be a bit closer. But what it did show an interesting trend. One, that governor is now not so popular anymore, but also we're seeing a softening in the Republican suburbs of Anchorage and such. So it's possible the very red Alaska gubernatorial race of 2018 showed us a trend that if the Democrats do it all well in the Senate elections, or in the national elections, and it goes over to the Alaska Senate race, could buoy Alan Gross into victory, because let's really look at how these numbers break down. So, right now, they're actually both taking an identical amount of each other's, the opposite party voters. So Al Gross gets about 13%, Dan Sullivan gets about 13%. But, and here's where it's important, due to the amount of voters Al Gross is taking with independents, it probably means when these votes break from not sure, down here, they're going to break slightly more favorably to Al Gross, which is just what he needs if we assume they both take the remaining members of their own parties. So Dan Sullivan gets all 13 remaining Republicans, Al Gross gets the remaining 11 Democrats, and these break, let's say, so right now, one's got about a third, one's got 50%, so we'll say we split it 3/5, 2/5. Al Gross wins. That's just what happens. Alaska's got a lot of independent voters. And of course, this isn't perfect. Of course, Republicans do outnumber Democrats in Alaska. But independents are close to outnumbering both. Or outnumber both, I believe. So, great map. Not to mention, here's the other key point. 88% of Democrats and 68% of independents say the country's on the wrong track. You don't vote for incumbency when you think your country's on the right track. And the Republicans may regret winning this gubernatorial election. Not only has Alaska turned on him, Dulvin, I can't remember his name. It starts with a D. Dunleavy, that's his name. They think, and they also think Alaska's not on the right track. Over 50%. Those are bad numbers for anyone who's trying to win an incumbency. Like I said, the Republicans may regret winning the gubernatorial election because it could cost them the Senate election, and I think they prize the Senate more than Alaska's governorship. I may be wrong, but yeah. It also doesn't help that while this is a good selection of voters, it's not an amazing selection, though I do think they are likely voters. Which is rather nice. Also the fact that it's Sullivan's approval is really close to the 50% line, along with his disapproval, does not bode good things for him. You want to be polling well with whites in Alaska, because if you can see, he's not polling that great with non-whites. So that could also doom him. So we'll do our last little bit here, because this is a very key point. Age breakdown. What we're seeing is Sullivan's approval is low across the board. We're not seeing, like, normally you'd see, like, if you're aiming to be the Republican candidate, you accept 18 to 45, you don't do well in, they disapprove of you. They also haven't heard much of you, so they poll a bit lower there. But over 65, you know you got that vote locked down, over 50%. The fact he doesn't have it now, he probably does in practice. These undecided voters will default to approving of him. Always assume that undecided voters will think the best of the incumbent, or of both candidates, most likely. But even if he's at the end of this, all of them go to him, he's getting 85% of the elderly. And most people under 65 disapprove of him. Those are bad incumbent numbers. Like, really bad. Well, most people still haven't heard of your opponent. We're talking only 46 to 65 are under a third having heard of him, or under 30% having heard of him, and that's at 29%. And what people hear, they like. Now, I've said this before, people inherently have a bias of, if they're interested in the race, and we're planning not to vote for Sullivan, they'll default to Gross. But it's still bad. People hear about him, and they're like, yeah, we're voting for Gross, over Sullivan. And if you look down here, Sullivan's not doing amazing at winning the over 65 vote. Here it's looking like it's about lining up. If all of them went for him, okay, that's 57% of the vote. That's great, but he's on track to lose 46 to 65, and knowing Republicans, will probably lose a solid chunk of the 18 to 45 vote. I'm actually surprised how many are voting for him. But yeah, if this is true, and even if we just follow the trend, more people are hearing about Al Gross and voting for him. That's a bad look. The only category he's winning here is high school graduate or less, which, is kind of expected, but that's really bad. Like, he's only got 40% that approve of him, and a third disapprove of him. And, his opponents in a similar is only 10 points behind him on approval. And that's because most people haven't heard of him. Blimey. Alaska's a sleeper race, people. Keep your eyes out for it. This has been One Man Think Tank. If you like the video, please leave a like down below. If you want to see more content from the channel, click the subscribe button and the notification bell. If you want to, please comment down below. I'm always curious to hear your opinions. I know this was a bit of a short one, but I really wanted to do some minor analysis of the Alaska poll, just because We don't get much out of it, and I really think this is going to be a bit of a sleeper race and is going to be a lot closer on election day than people expect. But, most importantly, have a wonderful day.